Fantastic Four is Marvel's most iconic superhero family, and in my opinion, they're the most iconic superhero family in all of comic books. And if that's the case, then you would think in today's media landscape with spin-off characters like Agatha or lesser-known characters like Peacemaker getting their own TV series, or legacy characters like Miles Morales' Spider-Man or Sam Wilson's Captain America getting their own movie, that you would think the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family, would have really iconic and really popular movies, right? And you wouldn't be wrong to think that, but the thing is, the Fantastic Four actually have a very unique history when it comes to the big screen, and in light of First Steps coming out literally tomorrow as I'm recording this, I figured I'd watch and review and rank all 4 Fantastic Four movies that have ever come out. And yeah, to my surprise, there's actually 4 Fantastic Four movies. So let's get started with the movie that the cast was actually tricked into making and actually never went public, all the way back in 1994. Now, without getting into the weeds and the technicality of this movie too much, just like the 2015 Fan4stic movie, this movie was purely made just so they could continue having the movie's licenses after Marvel sold all of their IPs and properties off whenever they're doing the bankrupt thing back in the day. So this movie, the cast was tricked into making it and it never actually came out. And I might be a heretic here, but I think this is maybe one of the best Fantastic Four movies. It's ranked lower on my list, but when it comes to one-to-one character and model adaptations from the comics, this movie absolutely crushes it. Yeah, it's obviously dated due to the time of coming out in 1994, and that is especially seen when it comes to the CGI and the effects done in this movie, but overall, this movie is kind of like lightning in a bottle when it comes to its successors that came after this. Really quickly going over the plot, I mentioned that this is a one-to-one adaptation of the comics, and it does a very good job of the Fantastic Four's original origin story. Reed and Victor Von Doom are in college working on a project for some experimental comet that's coming by, so they can harness the power of the comet and use its energy for whatever means necessary. And over the course of this experiment, Reed and Victor are discussing whether they should adjust certain things with the experiment, and then obviously it goes wrong and blows up and gives Victor Von Doom this really bad facial accident, and people actually think he died because of this. Turns out he just was hiding away and sulking for literally 10 years. Before we cut forward in the time jump, we actually saw Sue and Johnny as they were little kids, and they actually were family friends with Ben Grimm, which was pretty cool. I'm a little privy to the comics when it comes to the Fantastic Four, so I don't know if that's normally how the adaptation goes. Ben and Reed are obviously high school and college friends, and a weird thing happens where Sue is I want to say 10 years old in this movie at this point in time, and she calls Reed hot or dreamy or something, and then you cut forward 10 years into the future and you see Sue and Johnny are all grown up. Reed and Ben have obviously aged the 10 years that has happened, and now Reed and Sue are lovers, or they have a crush on each other, and I don't know, it's really weird. I'm just gonna choose not to think about the age gap. I know that's the origin in the comics, but seeing 10-year-old Sue Storm and then she has the hots for Reed and then they age 10 years and he just is okay with that, I'm going to choose to think in my head canon that they didn't have any contact for those 10 years. But what ends up happening is they go out into outer space to test the comet radiation or whatever, similar to the origin that always happens. They crash down to Earth and they find out that they actually got powers and exposed from the radiation of the comet. And the team has this really sweet but also haunting scene of them discovering that they have their powers, and they're looking at it very similar to a body horror aspect. Sue is turning invisible, Johnny's catching on fire, and Reed stretching his limbs all over the place. And yeah, that'd be cool to have those powers. But in this version, they actually look at it as kind of a curse. Ben hasn't had his transformation into the Thing yet, and he asks the group, he's like, are we going to be okay? Or he actually kind of questions the sanity and the safety of the 4 of them being exposed to whatever elements they were in space that gave them these powers. The 4 of them, once nighttime comes, they end up just falling asleep in the middle of this field where they crash landed, and there's this haunting interaction between Johnny and Reed where he asks them if we're going to be okay, and Reed basically says I don't know. Over the course of this movie, the film's B-plot, they definitely didn't have the rights to Mole Man because he just looks like a leprechaun from the old Leprechaun horror movie back in the 80s. But there's essentially Mole Man, so just put him in your headcanon as Mole Man, and he's stealing gems and has this army that is really, you can tell the plot and the writing was super underdeveloped and rushed. So there's basically just Mole Man doing shenanigans in the background. They kidnap Ben Grimm's love interest, which involves everyone in the overarching plot of the movie. But long story short, the main plot of this movie deals with the team getting their powers, getting captured by Dr. Doom, going into Latveria as he's trying to test them with their powers, and then the team becomes the Fantastic Four, and they go back to Latveria at the very end of the movie in the 3rd act and defeat Dr. Doom, and that's basically the end of the movie. This movie isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, no pun intended.
Say that again?
But this movie does a lot of things right. You can tell that they tried. They were definitely making a movie here, and as far as this film fell flat, I think they did a lot of things right. Doom's suit is very practical, and yeah, it might look plastic at times, but I think it looks so cool, especially compared to the Doctor Dooms that we see later on in this list. I think this has one of the best and most comic accurate looks when it comes to Doctor Doom's design. Overall, everyone in this movie is very comic accurate and practical for everyone in the movie. There are fragments of a good movie here, and I know that this was like a production issue that happened behind the scenes, so I'm not going to fault the movie too much for that. But one of the main standouts is that the actors, everyone involved, is doing absolutely the best that they can. I think they were trying their hardest because they truly believed that this movie was going to be made and it was going to be a standout, and it's especially noticeable for both the actors for Doctor Doom and Reed Richards. Like I said, the plot feels a little speed ran, but compared to everything else on this list, this feels like the most accurate and close when it comes to the counterparts of the Fantastic Four in the comics, which is really strange. Like, the movie that never officially got published, you can watch it for free on YouTube. That's the movie that feels like the closest to what the Fantastic Four should be, which is really interesting. Really quickly, I want to talk about the cons of this movie because I'm not going to punch down in the year of the big 2025, but there are things in this movie that obviously I'm not a fan of and didn't age quite properly. There's very poor execution, and it's probably honestly because the movie's unfinished. The movie aesthetically looks pretty bad at times, especially with the CGI or some sort of effects that they're doing. The lighting is also not the best. When Ben Grimm is talking, he absolutely looks like Freddy Fazbear, and honestly, it's so uncanny and haunting, which if they were going for like the body horror part of this movie, I think they absolutely crushed it, but I know that's not what they were doing. You can tell they CGI'd over Ben's face when he talks, and it's animated, and I do not like that. I like the practical effects more. There's definitely parts of this movie where it felt rushed, and you feel like we could have had more character moments of fleshing out who everyone is individually, and overall, there's just not a whole lot of good scenes when it comes to world building or exposition, but to be fair, I think this movie definitely was rushed, and as I watched a documentary about this movie after, that's definitely the case, and it's more obvious the more you watch this movie. I mentioned it earlier, but I think the best scene in the movie is when everyone's just now discovering their powers for the first time, and Ben is just sitting there in the dark waiting for his transformation to happen, because he knows like he's next, because he knows he's not going to be the only one unscathed by this, and it's just haunting getting to see the team freak out about their powers, and Ben is just sitting there almost like a psychosis waiting to see what happens to him. The dialogue obviously is dated and it's cheesy at best. It feels like this was meant to be aired at PBS, but overall, this is not a bad movie. You can just tell that it was rushed and it doesn't really go together as well as it should have. I said it earlier, but I'll say it again. The actors are absolutely doing the best they can, and you can tell that they genuinely care and want this movie to succeed. They want it to work. It's a very faithful comic book adaptation. I love all of the suits. Reed Richards feels like a dad in this movie, and I think that's the best compliment you can give any version of Reed Richards. The cast is great. It's a really fun and faithful adaptation, but due to the fact that this movie isn't finished, it was rushed, and the team was lied to behind the scenes, I can't rate this really any higher on the list. You can see the heart and soul in this movie. The aged effects are honestly so charming and cute, and I'm trying my best to look past it. Some of them are very noticeable. Yeah, I mean, I could riff on this movie all day long in the year 2025, saying like, oh, why isn't it like this or like this, especially when it comes to the visuals, but I'm not going to do that. That would just be stupid. So ranking this on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give the Fantastic Four from 1994 a proper 4 out of 10. Alright, let's get into the OG Fantastic Four from 2005. I have a mixed bag of feelings when it comes to this movie. Over the course of time and being chronically online, I was always told that this movie and like all of the Fantastic Four movies really were just terrible. And I've fallen victim to the like internet hive mind mentality, because I've told my own friends and family in the past, like, yeah, the Fantastic Four movies, none of them are good. Are any of them perfect and great? No, but I've specifically said in the past, like, none of these movies are good. Guys, this movie is great. Dare I say this movie's pretty fantastic. When it comes to the plot for this movie, it's just a very standard by-the-books origin story, very similar to the comics in the 1994 plot. As far as development and separation from the previous movie, there's not much there, just a longer narrative, a longer runtime, and definitely more character building, which I'm a huge fan of character building, and this movie, they did a lot of things right, and they actually fleshed out the characters and the dynamics between everyone, which, due to the limitations of the 94 movie, they didn't do. Starting with a lot of the things I liked from this movie, I didn't notice this when I watched the movie for the first time time as a child. But The Thing is the heart and soul of the film, and I obviously think and know that The Thing is the heart and soul of the Fantastic Four. So the first thing that I notice upon rewatch is getting The Thing as the heart and soul of the team, you're killing it. That's the best thing you can do, because here's the thing. He's the best part of the team. He's the most tragic and has the most unique powers, so you have to get his character and his story done right, and this movie does a great job doing that. And honestly, this just gets me more excited for First Steps, because from everything I've seen online and the trailers, The Thing for that version is going to be the heart and soul of the movie. And I think they're going to do a great job, and I'm really excited for this movie to watch literally tomorrow night while I have to edit this. So hopefully they do a good job. But after watching this movie, not only did it get me more hyped, but it got me hyped for The Thing being the core member of the Fantastic Four, getting a proper adaptation and justice done with the team, which is something that isn't really apparent in these next two movies. Every character in this movie is done and fleshed out phenomenally. There's good, faithful adaptations to the origin story and what I would expect to be a realistic story and what it would look like in our world. I mean, this was the 2000s, so every superhero adaptation had to be some sort of realism in what it would look like in our world. There's a lot of fun action set pieces and great use of their powers in the modern day, and there's definitely just a group of people behind the scenes for this movie that you can tell care and love about the characters in the Fantastic Four and want to just make the best movie they can. I really liked this one, and I wasn't expecting to. Like I said earlier, The Thing is heartbreaking, and he's really the main focus, and there's a whole body horror element as well, but not as dark as Fan4stic. Every character in this movie, except for Johnny, has to look at their powers as sort of a curse and not a gift instead. Instead of people instantly thinking that they're going into a superhero movie to have these characters be hyped up and think about all the cool things they do with their powers, all three of the team members, besides Johnny of course, look at this as like, I don't want this, I'm going to do everything I can to get away from it. And I think that's a very unique storytelling decision to be made. And then obviously Johnny's like, yeah, we got powers, that's what you would think every superhero would be like, let's find a way to monetize it and to be a superhero. Whereas the rest of the team, they're just trying to get rid of their powers, and I thought that was a brilliant decision by the people behind this movie. I'm a fan of the Fantastic Four, but I don't know like all the ins and outs. Spider-Man's like my main thing. I got a Spider-Man tattoo. So choosing to start with Sue being the lover of Doctor Doom in this movie, and then Reed and her being ex-lovers where he like has to win her back, and you can see how dark and evil Doom slowly develops to be over time. That's brilliant. I mean, there's probably countless comics where they do that, but it's the first time of me being exposed to that, so I really liked it. Honestly, I think this cast, obviously we'll see how the new cast does. This is like the perfect cast for the Fantastic Four. Everyone is killing it. Everyone's doing such a good job. I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. Okay, time to be negative and start punching down on this movie from literally 20 years ago. Some of the visuals are obviously outdated, and I think the hardest thing for any version of the Fantastic Four to do as showing their powers is Reed Richards. I'm very cautious to see how the new movie does that, but there's so many scenes, basically every scene, where Reed uses his powers, it just looks like a PS2 graphic. It looks awful. I think Act 2 in this movie got pretty boring at times. They definitely could have cleaned up a bit of the act to make it more solid and a more cohesive film, but the movie is already very short. All of the movies on this list are under 2 hours, so I understand why they kept some stuff so it wouldn't be just like an hour and 10 minutes. We do see small moments of heroes using their powers, but to be honest, there's not a whole lot of action scenes up until the very end of the movie with the final battle. I wish we would have seen more scenes of them like testing out their powers while fighting like petty criminals or just doing more things. There's a scene where the team's on the bridge and they use their powers for the first time, but other than that, it's just that scene and then the final battle. As far as character development between the main four members, they're definitely doing a good job with everyone except for Sue Storm. Up until the second act, Sue is mainly just there to look pretty, and then she strips down twice in this movie. You don't see anything, obviously, but it just makes me think, like, can the writers not find anything for Jessica Alba to do as Sue Storm besides just, like, look pretty and have two men fight over her? Her character, up until the second movie in this series, has no development, and it's honestly really stupid because Sue is the mother of the team, and when written properly, she can be the most interesting character. Towards the second half of the movie, she does lean into the motherly role of the film while parenting Johnny and being someone that can be relied upon for both The Thing and Mr. Fantastic. This movie's definitely cheesy due to the fact that it was in the 2000s, but I wouldn't say the dialogue is anything that stood out to me except for how many times they genuinely said the word fantastic. This movie was written very well. I'd give it a very solid rating, Overall, I like how this movie held up more upon rewatch. I'm anticipated to see that The Silver Surfer is probably going to be pretty bad, and I've always heard bad things about that movie and why they never got a third movie in the trilogy. This movie surprised me in a very good way, and I think that's really good when it comes to watching movies, especially superhero movies, from 20 years ago. Is it a perfect movie? No, absolutely not. I think it got a lot right when it comes to the character dynamic and the feel of the four for the team. Truly, this feels like the movie from 1994, just got a better script with better CGI and better actors. My only major complaint is this movie does feel rushed at times, but also feels slow at other times. Specifically in Act 2, there's not a whole lot they do between getting their powers and the final battle. One thing that's lacking in these two movies is Doctor Doom definitely could have been handled more properly. I feel like that's just me nitpicking, but there's no way that a weak Fantastic Four could actually go toe-to-toe with Doctor Doom if he wasn't deeply depowered. It's literally one of my only major complaints is that I wish this movie had to do more with Doctor Doom, because Doctor Doom is so sick, and there's nothing to do with Latveria in this, which is a huge missed opportunity. Overall, though, finally, this movie surprised me and is a great way to get introduced into the Fantastic Four. Call it recency biased or whatever you must. I really enjoyed this movie, and after hearing all of the negative reviews of this movie for years, I don't really get it. Maybe I'm looking at it because I'm so hyped for the new Fantastic Four movie to come out, but this movie's really solid. I expected this movie to be really bad, and obviously that's not the case, so I'm gonna give this a 7.5 out of 10.
My granny called, she said, Travis, you work too hard. I'm worried you for.
Alright, Rise of the Silver Surfer. I've heard only bad things about this movie growing up, and I get it now. I understand. This isn't the worst movie ever. It's not as bad as Fan4stic, but man, it's such a letdown compared to what just came before this. Very briefly, the plot revolves around the Silver Surfer coming to Earth heralding for Galactus, who is just coming to devour the Earth. The team must figure out a way how to get rid or destroy the Silver Surfer and stop Galactus from coming. The Fantastic Four ends up teaming up with the Army, and surprise, Doctor Doom never died. Yeah, so he and the Army team up together with the Fantastic Four to figure out a way to take down the Silver Surfer and ultimately try to stop Galactus from destroying the Earth. In the third act, to no one's surprise, Doctor Doom stabs everyone in the back, taking the power cosmic for himself, but then because it's a superhero movie, is ultimately defeated, and then the Silver Surfer, instead of like the Fantastic Four figuring out a way how to defeat Galactus, the Silver Surfer just like looks at Sue Storm and is like, you know what, humanity, yeah, we have a choice to be made. With great power comes great responsibility. Flies into Galactus, which I'll get into in a second, is just a version of a cloud, like from Green Lanterns in this movie, and he flies into the cloud and then just goes like this and then blows up and dies and kills Galactus as well. So that's the plot. Like, yeah, Sue and Reed are getting married throughout the movie, but other than that, there's not a whole lot. One of the good things about this movie is that it's short. It's really short. Like I said, every movie on this list is under an hour and a half, and this one, it's definitely noticeable because the Silver Surfer gets introduced, and there's like stuff going on around the world, and they're like, how do we fight the Silver Surfer? Okay, we figured it out. And then boom, it's final battle time. Like, this movie goes by so fast. Without riffing on it too much for a little bit, this movie does a really good job of focusing on the main team, and you can see that there's a genuine step up in terms of each character getting something to do in this movie. Instead of the first movie where Sue is just there to look like a blonde bimbo, she's actually the main character of this movie. Johnny is struggling to find purpose as a part of the B-plot of this movie, and this coincides very well with him struggling how to control his newfound powers that he got from touching the Silver Surfer. Because this is a family, the best thing this movie can do is choose to focus on the character dynamics, and they did that in this movie a lot better than they did in the first one. I think the pseudo Super Skrull scene of Johnny fighting Doctor Doom after absorbing the whole team's power, it's pretty cheesy, but it's also, I mean, it's pretty cool. You can tell that the core actors of this cast have really come into their roles, and I no longer see Jessica Alba or Chris Evans on screen as Jessica Alba or Chris Evans. I see them as Sue and Johnny Storm, and the same can be said for everyone else in this cast. I think this does a very good job of portraying that Reed is very obsessive in this movie, and does a very good job of doing that more in this movie than the first one, of how much he takes his work seriously and is literally pushing out everyone else in his life. That being said, though, without getting into it too much, there's a lot in this movie that I really didn't like. Dr. Doom comes back after killing him in the first movie, and I feel like they should have kept him dead and have him come back as the main threat in movie number 3. Continuing with the villains, the Silver Surfer in this movie feels very one-dimensional. And honestly, I don't know a whole lot about the Silver Surfer, and maybe that's how Norman Rad usually is, but he felt very like flat, and I just was not interested really at all with him. And I mean, he's the Silver Surfer, dude. He's so cool, but It just was like, oh yeah, I herald for Galactus. All right. Once again, the visual effects for Reed, I'm punching down here in 2025, but they're just atrocious. Don't get me started, again, like how I said Galactus is just a big cloud as a villain. Galactus is a force of nature, and I understand that narratively, and that doesn't mean you have to make him a cloud, but that's what he is in this movie, and I mean, this is Galactus, dude. This guy's so sick, and not just a cloud of mist and smoke. It's so stupid. The first half of this movie was written very well, in my opinion, setting up the stakes for the movie and what was happening with the plot points as far as the Silver Surfer coming and the army being interested in trying to do what they would do in reality and harness their powers. I just don't buy that this version of the Silver Surfer is some cosmic herald from Galactus. He just seems like a guy that can fly around and blast energy. Maybe that's just me being mean, and I just thought he was very flat, you know? I did appreciate the world building in this movie. It's definitely stepped up more than the first one. Getting to see the Fantastic Four getting involved with sponsorships, being on the world news, and now the army and a whole galactic cosmic force is something that's in this movie. I didn't expect that, but I did appreciate it. It shows that this is something that would definitely take place in the real world. If people had superpowers, they would be finding the fastest way to monetize it, whether it be on TikTok or whatever, trying to make money, getting brand deals on their superhero uniforms. I thought that was genius. And then the army getting involved, like, duh, that would happen. I thought the world building in this movie, like, was surprisingly really good. It seemed very realistic and not in like a Christopher Nolan Dark Knight way. It just seemed like, yeah, this is probably what would happen in the real world. There's definitely some cheesy one-liners when it comes to the dialogue being written in the mid-2000s, and I think the most noticeable, atrocious part of this is Doctor Doom saying, like, quippy one-liners. Like, that's not who Doctor Doom is. It feels like they're throwing them into the MCU, and that being said, literally watching this movie and having Doctor Doom quip made me so nervous, and I still am, for RDJ's version of Doctor Doom. Like, if he's gonna be an Ant-Man quipping machine, I don't even want to watch it. It's so scary. This is a very good airplane movie. It's not as bad as I remember, and I don't know why this movie never got a third movie to fully round out the trilogy, but it's not something that I'm necessarily upset about. I don't think this movie is bad. I've definitely heard that it's performed bad, and that's why, you know, they never got a third movie. It's a step down from the first one for sure, but I would have loved to see a third movie about the Skrulls or some other villain besides Galactus. Like I said earlier, I wish they would have figured out a way how to keep Doctor Doom and not involve him in this movie, and to just bring him back as the big bad or something to round out the trilogy. Let's see more of Latveria, because we didn't see any of it besides one time with a word on a boat in the middle of the ocean. But this movie isn't as bad as I've heard it was. It's definitely not as bad as Fan4stic, so that being said, I'm going to give Fantastic Four: The Rise of the Silver Surfer a 6 out of 10. Alright guys, this movie's terrible. We all know it is. There's nothing good when it comes to this movie except for, like, say that again?
Say that again?
Like, that is the only good part of this movie. I'm not even kidding. I'll give you a little insight into what I normally do. When I watch the movies and do, like, reviews and stuff, I get a Google Doc on my phone, and I type and make notes and stuff as I'm going along. This is the only notes that I have on the Google Doc for this movie, because I chose to spare my sanity instead of seeing something on the screen and typing it out that I didn't like. This whole movie is terrible. I'll get into it very briefly, but man, if you guys want to watch a 4-hour-long video essay of everything wrong with this movie, you guys can go do that. I'm not making a video like that. Just know this movie is awful. There's nothing that this movie does good except for the memes. The main plot of this movie is that the planet, due to global warming, is dying. The resources are scarce and nothing's gonna happen. Everyone's gonna die. So Reed Richards, Victor, and the gang and everyone has to go to another dimension, pull resources, bring them back to the Earth, and save the planet. So what ends up happening is Miles Teller, his version of Reed, and Ben Grimm obviously are good friends. They create a device that they thought was like instant teleportation at this like high school science fair thing, right? Turns out it can go interdimensionally. And the stupid teachers are like, nope, it's not like a volcano made out of baking soda. We're going to fail you. So what ends up happening is Sue Storm's dad, Franklin Richards, has been like stalking them and is at the science fair and is like, hey man, you know that this actually is like interdimensional travel that you cracked, not just teleportation. Like, oh really? That's cool. So the whole, oh my gosh, I'm just now remembering. The whole movie is the gang goes to this like military facility and they team up with Victor Von Doom, who's just a dick. Like, he's not even evil. He's just a mean. and they're recreating their teleporter or their interdimensional travel device, but at a larger scale. And then obviously the team like succeeds. They build it on a larger scale. They're like, hey, let's go check out this new dimension. They go to the dimension. Bad stuff happens. Victor falls into like some acid. They leave him. They go back to Earth. The whole team gets their powers through like the cosmic rays or whatever, right? It's a change on the origin story. I don't care if you change stuff about origin stories for characters, as long as it's done properly, right? Like, I don't love what they did with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but you can tell, and Andrew Garfield's as well, like, the origin story from the comics is different with the adaptations. You can tell they had a purpose, though, and it actually worked out pretty well. They changed the story with these guys, and it's just awful. So if you're gonna, like, stray away from the comics, you better do a good job and not do whatever this is. So the whole movie is this dark, gritty take on what would happen if the Fantastic Four got powers in our world, right? Which is cool, right? I like there's like a Marvel universe, I think it's called like Marvel Real or something, I don't know, where like Spider-Man's webs like shoot out of his arm as like his arteries or something, I don't know. But it's like a dark, gritty version. Like Bruce Banner gets exposed to gamma radiation and he just gets cancer, right? It's like, oh, here's what would happen, kind of like Invincible or The Boys in the real world. If that's what they were trying to do, and they did a good job with it, hey, it's not my cup of tea, but I understand, right? That's not what this is. This is just terrible. So the whole movie takes place inside of a green screen facility. Not one time in this movie did anyone do any superheroing. Like the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, where they're iconically taking cats out of the trees, there's nothing. There's no superheroing going on in this movie. Everyone, and you can tell by their costumes, if you can even call it that, everyone in this movie is used as a rogue military asset. The Thing, Ben Grimm, the high schooler, has like 43 confirmed kills, I'm pretty sure. Like, they got their superpowers and they're assets for the military. That's what would happen in the real world. Don't get me wrong. The three-letter agencies would see these teenagers and be like, no, man, we're killing your family if you don't work for us. We get it. That's what would happen. I don't want to watch a movie about that. It's like a pseudo body horror movie, seeing how the Thing has no pants or whatever, and showing how awful it would be to get powers like this, mixed with a team of teenagers being used as military assets. There's no superheroing going on. There's no team dynamic. I don't know how Michael B. Jordan and Miles Teller recovered from this movie because they're both pretty awful in this movie. The dialogue in this movie is honestly one of the worst parts. It's been memed to death with the say that again part.
Say that again?
But that's not even the worst thing. These people talk like they're super geniuses, like everyone in the room and everyone watching the movie is young Sheldon. This movie has no idea what a normal conversation looks like. The dialogue between these characters is just so corporate and bland. I know ChatGPT wasn't out by then, but I guarantee you if you were to write, hey, generate me a script of super smart science characters talking for a movie, it would come out something like this. It's so stupid. It's distracting. This movie is filled with one-liners. The line delivery for everyone overall is just terrible. I don't know, man. There's not a whole lot I liked about this movie. I could sit and riff on it for hours. I'm not going to do that just because it's boring. The plot development is they get their weird powers in this dimension. Okay, cool. They then come back to Earth and they're being tortured and used as rogue military assets. Miles Teller runs away because he's sad. He gets kidnapped or brought back to the facility against his will. They're like, hey, we got to go back and get more coal from this other dimension. While doing that, Victor Von Doom comes back. He looks horrible and is just a murdering rampage monster who wants to now take over the Earth. And then they kill him and they win the day by a CW style with a blue beam in the air. Nothing about this movie is good. The dialogue is awful. The character chemistry, it's not a family. It's not the Fantastic Four family. It's just four people that have powers. There's no character dynamic here. The aesthetic is just gray and ugly and stupid. Pros are the memes. Like, say that again.
Say that again?
It's so funny that that's the only thing good about this movie. The only redeeming factor from this movie could be that they bring Miles Teller back as the Maker. Besides that, this movie's awful. It's not even a good, fun, bad movie like Morbius. I'm a fan of the Fantastic Four. I'm not a mega fan. So it's not like I could watch this movie and like it pisses me off to my core or anything. It's just boring and bland. That's like the worst thing any superhero movie could be. If you're gonna be a bad superhero movie like the early like 2000s Daredevil movie, or you're gonna be Morbius, or Madam Web. Like, that's fine. At least you're aware. Venom, you're aware of what you're being. This just sucks. This is the worst thing ever. 2 out of 10. I just got back from watching Marvel's Fantastic Four: The First Steps, and this movie's fantastic.
Say that again?
Jokes aside, I went in with this movie for really high expectations, and I think the movie delivered. It's not as good as I'd like it to be, but I think that's genuinely my fault expecting this to be like the best Marvel movie ever. Is it the best Marvel movie ever? No, not at all, but it deserves the hype and the praise that it's getting. This movie is genuinely really, really good. I think it's by far the best visually looking Marvel movie that we've seen in a very long time, and I think can only be rivaled against Doctor Strange. One of my favorite parts about this movie is that the characters, the main cast, is first and foremost a family, and that's most apparent with Sue and Johnny. I mean, you can see that in the other movies and the other adaptations of the Fantastic Four that they're trying their best to come across as a family, but to me, they've always come across as more of co-workers or just a gang of people that came together, whereas the plot of this movie is genuinely a wrapped around family. And I'm not going to get into any spoilers with this review, but this is a movie first and foremost about family, and this movie has the sauce. This movie has the heart and soul that you would want to see from a Fantastic Four, and I think this is, besides the 1994 version, one of the most comic accurate versions of the Fantastic Four. As far as adaptations straight out of the comics, they are an actual astronaut team, whereas that's not something that's apparent in any of the other versions that we've seen on the big screen so far. Everyone has something to do in this movie. I think the Thing is a little lackluster with some of the plot lines that he's involved in. Everyone else, though, has something to do, and you can see the burden and the weight and the guilt of everyone involved in this movie. This is a very heavy movie emotionally, but it's also a very lighthearted and fun movie. The tonal balance is amazing, and I think they did a fantastic job with this movie. I'll be honest, when Reed Richards was announced as Pedro Pascal and Johnny Storm was going to be cast as Joseph Quinn, I was not bought in. I thought those were terrible casting decisions, and to my surprise, Joseph Quinn is the MVP standout role, in my opinion. There's a few scenes early on that did get me bought in immediately as Pedro Pascal as Reed, but looking back, I'm not entirely sold as him being Mr. Fantastic. There's 1 or 2 scenes specifically where you can see that he is burdened with knowledge, and not that he thinks he's the most knowledgeable person or the smartest person in the room. He knows it, and there's a guilt and a burden that comes with that, but I don't think Pedro Pascal has really portrayed like a super cocky version of Reed Richards where he knows he's the smartest person in the universe. Instead, it just seems like he's, I don't know, kind of wimpy at times, for lack of a better word. He does a good job acting, but I'm not quite entirely sold on him. As far as Vanessa Kirby and Cousin as the Thing, I think they absolutely crushed it. I was sold right from the get-go with them as these versions of their characters, and like I said earlier, I think this is just them ripped straight out of the 60s Fantastic Four comic books. If you're wanting to watch a comic book come to life, this is the movie for you. Whether it be from the action, from the visuals, the storytelling, this feels like a comic book in the best way possible. Some of my only complaints with this movie is the lack of action, but I think it actually services very well. I mentioned in my reviews previously that not a lot of action goes on in the Silver Surfer movie, whereas you get introduced to the team, and the Silver Surfer shows up, and then boom, we're at the final battle. That's not necessarily the case here. There's action in the second act specifically, and I thought was honestly the better part of the movie. The third act, in my opinion, gets very lackluster, and I don't think they quite stick the landing when it comes to defeating Galactus and facing off with them at the end. Everyone gets their own action scene and their own fight scene to show off their powers and then eventually come together as a team to help defeat Galactus, but as far as payoff, I don't think the third act really does a good job servicing that. The action, in my opinion, is the best in the second act. There's a space chase scene where they're like flying through light speed through a black hole, and it feels like it's ripped straight out of Star Wars, and I think that is probably the best scene in the entire movie. The Silver Surfer surfs on lava in the middle of space, and I mean, that's peak. If that's not peak, I don't know what is. And the way they defeat Galactus honestly isn't satisfying, and it doesn't feel like it paid off what they were building up to the entire time throughout the movie, but that's really my only complaint, is the fact that I don't think Pedro Pascal really sold me as Reed Richards, and there's not a whole lot of scenes with the gang using their powers, except for Johnny Storm. He uses his powers a lot throughout the movie. Besides that, there's not a whole lot of scenes of the team using their powers, and I get what they were going for with waiting to use their powers and like their budget and having a big payoff at the end, but I don't think that necessarily stuck the landing, and so that made the third act feel very lackluster and kind of disappointing in my opinion. That being said, I think the main plot of this movie and the main storytelling aspect is really, really good. I think this is by far the best Fantastic Four movie we've ever seen, and hopefully they get a second sequel in the future. And I think this movie just is a really good entry. This is a comic book movie come to life, like I said, in the best way possible, and this feels like what Marvel should have been from the beginning. I get introducing in the late 2000s Iron Man and everyone in like a grounded realism of what this would look like in our world, but I'm at the point where I don't want to see that. That's why I like James Gunn's Superman movie, because that was a fantastical, mystical movie, whereas this being set in a different universe is the best case scenario for this movie because they're not tied down to anything with the MCU. I think this is going to result eventually with the MCU being rebooted after Secret Wars, which is a video for another time, but this movie being set aside and being able to do their own thing with their own aesthetic and their own world greatly benefits the movie. I could glaze this movie for hours. It's not the best movie I've ever seen. It's not the best Marvel movie I've ever seen. It's not a perfect film, but this is a really, really good movie. They do a great job at the very beginning of the movie with this like 1960s World War II style propaganda, introducing you to the team, and instead of selling you on propaganda of like, hey, let's go to war or buy this, they're selling us, the audience, on the idea of the Fantastic Four. There's no prerequisites for going into this movie. All you have to know is that this is a superhero movie and we're going to watch these people who have powers. There's nothing you need to know about doing homework before this movie because the first 10-15 minutes sell us, the audience, on who these characters are and what their stories are, and I think it does a great job doing so. I also thought this movie did a really good job when it came to the pacing. I've heard people online criticize the pacing of this film, but I don't see it. I think they did a really good job. I'm not going to get into too many spoilers here, but the first act is basically just us getting introduced to the team and the universe. The second act is the team figuring out how they're going to defeat Galactus, and there's this really cool space scene through outer space that I mentioned earlier. I thought it was phenomenal, and then the third act is obviously them trying to defeat Galactus, which Galactus was done brilliantly in this movie. I mean, he is finally the purple-headed, like, metallic monster that we've seen, made out of machines, and is devouring planets, not because he wants to, but because he has to. We're done with the age of non-comic book accuracy, and I'm here for it. So overall, this movie was a really good movie. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, but I had a great time watching it. Rounding out the video, though, I'm going to give Fantastic Four: The First Steps an 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed this movie. It's very heartfelt. It's a fun watch. There's a lot of energy. The actors are doing a great job. It's visually stunning, and if you're a fan of comic books or you're a fan of superhero movies, you're going to get something out of this movie because this is a fun ride. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. This is my second video I've made recently, watching a whole lot of movies and compiling them into one mega video. So if you haven't already, go check out my Superman movie. I'll have it tagged on the screen soon below, where I watched and ranked every Superman movie that's ever come out in live action, and I'm really proud of the work it's done. It's got copyright striked, but you know what, who cares? Overall though, I hope you guys liked the video, and I hope you guys liked the movies as well. I had a lot of fun watching these movies. I had a lot of fun making this video, so that's really what matters most to me. Let me know your thoughts on the video down below. Let me know your thoughts on these rankings. If you've seen the new Fantastic Four movie, if your reviews are different, if you're a Fan4stic stan, if any of you guys even exist. But overall though, thank you guys so much for watching. I had a whole lot of fun making this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. So I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.